On the stage with me are 4 people with a deep foundation of experience, not only managing horses through that transition, but the people and the mindsets on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. We've got Tom Persicino. He is the Director of Equine Welfare with the ASPCA Right Horse. We've got Ashley Watts. She's a hunter jumper trainer and owner of Liftoff Equestrian, and she's also the head of Cantor, Kentucky. We've got Dr. Brian Waldridge right next to me. He is a veterinarian, and more specific to this panel, he's the veterinarian for Old Friends. And we've got Kenki Sato, an equestrian Olympian based in Japan and representing the JRA. So thank you guys for being here. And I'd love if we could just start off with a little overview of your careers and how Aftercare relates to that, because I know none of you deal exclusively in your day-to-day activities with thoroughbreds and thoroughbred aftercare, but it's really intertwined in a lot of your professional obligations. So could we maybe start with you, Brian, and just kind of give us a 2 to 3 minute overview of what your day-to-day career is and how thoroughbred aftercare plays a part in that?
I'm Brian Waldridge. I currently work at Mississippi State University in the hospital there. I do equine internal medicine. And I'm native Kentuckian, so I was lucky enough to work up here for a while before I went to Mississippi and became involved with Old Friends, and that's where my movement into aftercare came from. I've had a 1-horse stable a couple times. I have 1 pair of silks, and so I've also had, the horses. I got what I'm raising now, so became really interested in racing. Really through Old Friends got me into racing. I guess I did the opposite. Old Friends got me interested in having my own horses. And so I have both of my retired horses are with me, so I run a small retirement farm too in Mississippi.
Perfect, thank you. Tom?
Yep. Tom Persicino. I know a lot of you in the room. I spent a couple of decades at the American Quarter Horse Association, where among the things I did was try to work on welfare issues. But about 7 years ago, I made the switch to the welfare side of the equation. I now work for the ASPCA, where I really have kind of a hoof, if you will, in 2 different camps. I work with our ASPCA Right Horse program. Our Right Horse program is a group of both adoption and industry partners who come together, team, partner, collaborate to try to massively increase adoptions of horses. I refer to it often when I'm talking to people as sensible industry meeting sensible welfare, and that's what the Right Horse program is all about. Secondly, and really probably the most fun part of what I get to do, and hopefully, is this a good time for the video if I speak real quickly?
Sure, if you'd like to.
I get to oversee our ASPCA Equine Transition and Adoption Center, which is a facility that we have in Oklahoma City, which for those of you who don't know where it is, we're right in the center of the country. Where we're an open admission facility. We bring horses in, we triage those horses, we hold on to the horses that most of our adoption partners or rescues out there might consider to be the difficult to adopt or the hard to adopt. They come with a lack of training, or as I often say, sometimes they've detrained. We work with those, we unlock what's holding them up at these facilities across the country and share out what we're doing in order to try to meet our goal of massively increasing adoptions of horses. I'll hush, and we've got a quick video, I think, that explains this a little bit better.
Oh, she is just telling me it is a QR code that people can watch.
Never mind, then you're not going to get to see it or hear me on video, but there is a QR code in there. But that is the fun part of what I get to do, is the day-to-day in the barn work with the horses that we see come in. We deal with all breeds of horses there. About a third of them are thoroughbreds, transitioning thoroughbreds.
Awesome. How about you, Ash?
Hello, I'm Ashley Watts, and I grew up on the West Coast. I have a farm in Versailles, Kentucky, named Liftoff Equestrian, which was actually named after a jumper I had as a kid that was an off-the-track thoroughbred turned jumper. I've had that business about 18 years. We do hunters, jumpers, sales, lessons, showing at the local and rated level, mainly in Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee. At our farm, we have all different ages from like 5 to 70 plus, and primarily we have warm bloods, thoroughbreds, quarter horses, Welsh ponies. And I'm also the president of the Kentucky Hunter Jumper Association, so I'm actively involved in the local horse show industry here. And I got into Cantor and helping with retraining and adopting their horses about 9 years ago. And I believe we adopt an average of like 15 to 20 horses out per year.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Kenki Sato. So I was born in monk temple. Then I'm also Buddhist monk now. And the other side, I was Kentucky World Excellence Games and London Olympic Games as a 3-day eventing rider, like Boyd Martin. So I had a lot of learn from Olympic Games and the big games. And now I give back to this experience to young horses. Young horses mean in not only sports warm blood horse. I'm also a lot of working for the OTTBs, horse celebrate. Then it's not a side project for me. Really important for me, like it's my life. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with you, Ash, with Canter. Can you walk us through what the typical intake process is when you get a horse in and kind of give us a hint of what the financial burden is on that as well for an organization?
Yeah, I feel like each situation's an individual situation. They're not all the same. Sometimes we have the trainers sending us the horses, or it's directly dealing with the owners. Sometimes they've had time off in the field. Most of the time they come straight from the track. I would say the most time-consuming part is getting the horses just kind of decompress from their racing career and getting them used to turnout again, introducing them to a friend, getting their feet in order. A lot of times people pull the shoes, and I don't quite understand that. I'd rather the shoes stay on, turn them out. If they pull the shoes, then it takes a lot longer to get them going because they haven't gone without shoes for a long time. So that's a big thing. Anyways, and so that can end up being time consuming, monetarily, can just cost a lot of money to get going again. We probably take a month of just getting them used to being a horse again, putting them in the cross ties, getting used to not being tied in a stall, grooming there. A lot of times I'll hang out with them while I'm teaching and just get them used to the activity in the ring because it's just different for them having horses go every which way and jumping jumps. Most of the time the noise is what they're most sensitive to. We'll do some desensitizing, and then once they're ready to get going, which every horse is different. Some it takes a month, some it takes a week or 2 weeks. We'll start just with lunging, standing on the mounting block, getting them used to just standing next to us, being taller than them, and then go from there with some line driving, long lining. It depends on when I sit on them, depending on their temperament, and some days I can just get right on and go walking off, trot, canter, go for a trail ride. Other times we end up having to just take our time with getting on and off and walking and staying calm. With canter, potential adopters can ride the horses. So a big deal is getting on safely, quietly. That's like the most time-consuming part, I think, for people trying the horses. Monetarily, I would say it's after about a month of riding, you figure out if you're needing the vet to help you with some situations or surprises like screws or arthritic problems that help us determine what the career should be for the horse. And we don't require a donation, but we really recommend one because the first 3 months, the horse is really just costing money and it's not adoptable. So that's, I think, where it's really helpful to have the aftercare organizations helping with the different grants so these horses can get a proper turnaround to get adopted the most successful way we can do so. And we have a little more time, and we only have up to 4 horses, so we can spend more time than these other programs that have 20, 30 plus horses. So we're really lucky that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you make, that so many people who are retiring these horses off of the track they've just probably never taken the time to fully think through what the process is and what the financial burden is to the organization retiring that horse. So the donations coming with the horse can be super
And we always go
helpful.
through that phase, like the ugly phase, I call it, where, you know, they start losing their hair, they've been rained on, and then you don't want to show them to people when that's going on.
I
So-
don't like people looking at me in that face.
No, so that can also prolong things.
So, Tom, I know you talked about the challenges that you guys face in the video that we did not yet get to see, but I'm sure that we all will. And so I was wondering if you could talk us through what some of those challenges are, because I know it's not just thoroughbreds. You deal with all breeds, but what are some of the things that you guys deal with that might be good takeaways for those dealing with the transition of thoroughbreds specifically?
Yeah, sure. And we do deal with all breeds of horses. And I think there are some things that we have learned that, irrespective of breed, it's certainly shareable information. And you're probably going to hear some themes from previous panels. I was chuckling up in my seat, as well as repeating one another here. But the first thing I would just say is, let them decompress when they come to you. They've been conditioned to make left-hand turns here in the States anyway. Let them just go out and be a horse for a while. We used to rush into what we call our basics behavior profile, which is a series of 13 behaviors that we like our horses to have. We don't rush it anymore. We just let them go be a horse, and then we start to interact with them after they decompress from coming from the racetrack. So while length of stay is something that we need to keep our eye on, also taking our time, and like I said, decompression is a good thing. I would say emphasize the versatility, and that includes horses that are deemed non-rideable. They have a spot, and that's one thing that we've learned, is that non-rideable does not mean unadoptable. They're very much adoptable horses. Developing relationships with the owners and the trainers and the track executives and the people in your community, highly, highly important, and something that we've been trying to do. Recognize that we can't save all of them, and we've got to focus our limited resources toward making the greatest impact for the greatest number of horses. And I hope we have the chance to talk about the role that euthanasia plays in our programs here in a little bit. Be creative in your grant requests. We, the ASPCA, our Equine Welfare Department, we award a loan $1 million. We often tap into additional money from the other side of the organization to ramp up that $1 million into more funds. Be creative in your grant requests when you send them to, whether it's us as a funder or somebody else as a funder. We really love seeing creative ways of rehoming and transitioning these horses. Opening up your adoption processes, stop making it so hard to adopt from a rehoming organization that you're driving people away from adoption and toward private treaty sales or those darned auctions that we don't necessarily want them going to. Quick example, we just got through with an adoption affair at Equine Affair in Columbus, Ohio. It would probably make some of you feel like you have your underwear on backward to join us at that, but I encourage you to do it. We adopted out 35 horses on the spot to people who came down the shed row, the barn aisles of Equine Affair last week. They found great homes. We really try to keep our adoption process conversation-based and trust the adopters or the potential adopters who are coming to you and help them. The last thing I'll say, Dr. Forbes threw up the slide and I thought it was just awesome. Recognize, please, this is always a horse-human issue. You can't bifurcate them. You can't separate them no matter how hard you try. If you vilify the human, you've screwed your organization over. It very much is a horse-human issue, and approaching it holistically like that, we think, is super important.
Great. Those are really good tips. Thank you. Kenki, I'd love to go to you next. As an eventing Olympian and a gold medalist at the Asian Games, you've had an opportunity to ride a wide variety of horses, thoroughbreds, warm bloods, I'm sure other breeds. Can you talk through some of the differences in training and riding an off-track thoroughbred as opposed to other breeds that are purpose-bred for the sport of eventing or other equestrian sports?
Okay, so first, can I use the translate?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. If they understand Japanese, no problem, but maybe not.
He told me on our pre-call that he does much better in English when he's had a few beers.
Okay. まずはじめにサラブレッドは、速く走るために、競争で一番になるために、生まれてきました。僕らが始めるのはその馬術の基本的な動作から、すごい初歩的なところから始めることから始めます。そ その中で適性だったりとか、は変わってくるんですけど、運動していく中でその馬術に合った筋肉であったりとかマインドは徐々に育っていきます。特に、僕がやっていた総合馬術クロスカントリーにおいては、彼らの心肺的な機能は大きな武器となって、非常に、役に立つとサラブレッドの可能性であったりとか、チャンスを僕は信じています。
Okay, one key difference between off-track thoroughbreds, well, they raced to run fast. Well, and horses bred for sport like dressage or eventing, such as warm-broods, is that OTTBs have already had a racing career. They are used to running fast in a straight line, so when they switch to a new job, like dressage or cross country, they have to learn how to move differently and respond to new signs. At early stage training, more focus on helping them relax, building the right muscles. They do have good mind and get used to new kinds of pressure and communication. It takes time to require even patience, but they're smart and quick learner. Once they understood what's being asked, they try very hard. Because of their racing background, many OTTBs are also mentally and physically very tough. That toughness is a big advantage in demanding sports like eventing, where stamina and resilience are they require and key.
Thank you. Kenki, I'd like to stick with you, so sorry to double up on you, but I know you have ridden so many amazing thoroughbreds at very competitive levels, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about one or two of them and maybe a few characteristics that made them so special.
一つの経験として僕自身中学生の時に引退競走馬で全日本のジュニア選手権、これは障害馬術小ジャンピングの120センチぐらいのクラスなんですが、優勝した経験があります。そこには当然、ウォームブラッドだったりとか経験のあるスポーツがいた中でそのサラブレッドで優勝したということは、僕自身今の僕自身この引退競走馬を育てる、きっかけにもなったし、そこで得たものはとても大きいと思います。去年、2024年に行われた、日本国内での引退競走馬の試合で、一頭の馬にルコリエという馬に出会ったんですが、そこで優勝させてもらいました。彼女がまた今後の活躍が楽しみですし、僕のようにそのジュニアだったりとか新しいライダーにとってきっかけを生む馬になってほしいなと思っています。
One of the most memorable thoroughbreds I have worked with was a very sensitive horse I met when I was in junior high school. Other riders had a hard time training him, and when he came to me, he was still refusing jumps. It took time and required patience. Nevertheless, he slowly built communication and trust with me. At the end, we won the junior championship at the 120 centimeter level show jumping. I was especially proud because many of other horses in competition were purpose-bred sports horses. That experience showed me how rewarding it can be to train horses and how much potential thoroughbreds really have and on. It was the start of my journey in retraining off-track race horses. Another special horse was a thoroughbred named Luke Correa. He came to me right after retiring from racing and was eager to learn from the beginning. He always tried to understand what I was asking. We built a great partnership. back in 2024, we won the championship just as a retired racing horse.
Thank you. And so Ashley and Kenki, you guys have a lot of experience with the mainstream equestrian world that may have some of these biases we've talked about against thoroughbreds, or you might deal with other types of challenges when you're getting horses sold or adopted out. I was wondering if Ashley, if you could start first, and then we can go to Kenki, since he has much more of a global batch of experiences, and just talk through some of those challenges that you see or the biases.
Well, society is so full of instant gratification, right? So a thoroughbred off the track is going to take time to decompress, then learn about his new career, go to horse shows, learn it's not a race, especially if you're trying to make it a hunter. It's going to take it a long time to get prepared. So in the last panel, I can't remember who said, but it was like the in search of ads. I mean, how often
Lindsay
I see
said that, yeah.
Yeah, in search of ads for, the horse with the description, no thoroughbreds. And then now they put in parentheses like a little disclaimer, like, I love them, just not suitable for this child or this rider or whatever. And I can understand that. There's a sensitivity that the thoroughbred has, which I appreciate, because I feel like you can pull the horse out and get a better feel for what you're dealing with that day, where a warm blood, like the other, you're seeing those in the hunter's ring so much, you don't always know. They kind of all of a sudden explode, and you're like, oh, well, that was in there. Where a thoroughbred, you can tell from the beginning if that's coming. So I just think the process it takes with the thoroughbred takes more patience, more time. The perception that, yeah, they're broken or going to be broken or can't last, that's in there too. I have quite a few clients. I've bought horses for the past year that have had thoroughbreds that had to retire them because of previous injuries. And so then they were saying, I don't want a thoroughbred. One ended up with one did not. And the enthusiasm a thoroughbred shows at the track or in race training, racehorse people, thoroughbred people understand that. But my 10-year-old kid is going to get scared of that and get hurt potentially. So that's where it's that education component of that process to get them prepared for more of an amateur type of rider that's going to be timid and more anxious and more nervous, and the horse is going to feed off all those feelings. So I guess that's where we look into horses retiring sooner for the component of their longevity of another career, and also getting that time to decompress after, so then they can have kind of a fresh start to what they're going into next. And at the horse shows, I would say it's very helpful to have the classes that are thoroughbred classes at the horse park, like Kentucky Spring coming up. There's Take Two or Tip. That's really helpful to just give them their own area to show in. Because some of the horses, the thoroughbreds, can't quite compete against a warm blood, and same thing back and forth. So it's just nice to have a little, what word am I looking for? Just more of a specific
Designated area.
Thank you. For these horses to be able to go compete. And I feel like it's sometimes more of a level playing field till the horse gets more experience under its belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point about that being such a good transition to going to a big show with a huge environment, but still having the security of a smaller, quieter class to get into its showing career before it is just out in the open with everyone. What I know, you've competed in Japan, all through Asia, in Europe. Can you talk a bit about what some of the feedback has been in those different countries with regard to thoroughbreds?
そうですね、今だけに限らず日本ではそのサラブレッドの活用という意味で、リトレーニングを、した背景があります。現在、乗用馬の中で 70% が約サラブレッドが、競技馬だけではなく、いろんなものを含めて約 70% の馬がサラブレッドです。そういった意味ではもう以前からそういうリトレーニングをするという文化があったので、僕自身は、とてもナチュラルなことですね。
So in Japan, there are not many sports horses bred domestically. So thoroughbreds have long been used for riding. Even today, about 70% of riding horses are retired race horses. Because of this, I even personally thinks there is not much bias against them. They're very common and familiar. So of course, some people like to ride sports horses. However, thoroughbreds are widely accepted and appreciated in Japan.
Thank you. Now I'd like to kind of switch gears a little bit because Brian, at Old Friends, you deal with a wide variety of types of horses. You deal with young horses coming off of the track, retiring to Old Friends. You deal with older stallions coming out of breeding careers, retiring from to Old Friends. And so I was wondering if you could talk us through some of the commonalities and differences between those two categories of horses, and what are maybe a few things that make that transition easier for them?
I think everybody's hit on what I'd say the same time period of 1 month. Seems like it takes 1 month for them to really settle. And some of the things we live with those breeding stallions is, their whole life they've track, eat at 5:30, go out to track 7:30, get fed again before everybody goes home, get fed again 5:30, and then they go to the breeding shed. They go into the same paddock every day for 10 years, fed on the same schedule again. And then I think sometimes they think, what do I do now when they come? And we always say we need to stay out of their way and let them figure out life again. And sometimes they haven't really seen a paddock in a while. We had a stallion come not too long ago, and they said, well, he can't ever look at this other stallion that's there because they used to be across from each other and they don't like each other, and they really don't like each other. So we had to figure out where we're going to put him and where we're going to put somebody else to keep them happy. And so part of it's just finding their right spot, and we're lucky we have some stalls that have little paddocks out behind them, and I think that's been important for a lot of those horses. So they can go out, kind of look around, and they can come back in their paddock or in their stall and get kind of used to what they did before, and just so they kind of get a gradual return to it. Sometimes we'll put them on some medications, but not very often we've had to do that. Some of them get pretty nervous, and maybe we need to do that for a short period of time. But that would be the rare horse, and just picking up on their quirks. We always say we're going to figure out what they like. It's not up to us to make them be the way that we want them to be. So I think taking your time, giving them that month, and just figuring out how they tick sometimes, because they'll have little quirks. And I think one of the things that's hard to overcome that we don't always think about is how they've been used to the same thing every day for a lot of their life, and they kind of don't know how to let down. Like a lot of us, I'm sure, don't know how to let down if it's more than a few hours at a time.
Yeah. And so kind of touching on, Tom, what you had mentioned earlier on the topic of euthanasia, and I want to include Brian in on this too, so maybe the two of you could both offer your perspectives on it. You deal with horses that are aging. You also deal with horses that have either physical or behavioral issues that prevent them from being suitable for second careers. So can you talk through a bit how you approach the decision of if and when to euthanize and some of the factors that are in play there?
Yeah, so courteous. And I want to acknowledge too that just the topic of euthanasia is it's hard to approach, and it's sensitive, and I know there's many differing opinions, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to honor that. But I don't think any discussion about rehoming horses is complete without talking about the role that euthanasia plays. I also want to say that for us, at the ASPCA and certainly at our transition center, age is not an illness. We do not look at age as an illness. So if somebody sends us a 30-year-old thoroughbred, if she or he is healthy, she's going in the adoption pool. If she or he has, age compounded with medical issues and or behavioral issues, we're probably going to do an evaluation on that. And it's usually a quality of life either for the horse, or does that horse represent a danger to the person that we might be adopting it out to. So we would consider and pursue and talk about as a group the role that euthanasia plays. But I think just bigger picture for us, it probably involves two things. One, helping owners with the decision about euthanasia has to be a bigger part of what we do. Oftentimes, we'll receive a phone call from an owner who has a horse that they think is at the end of their life, and the more you just start talking to them, well, she's 32 years old, and she's got an avicular, and she doesn't have any teeth left, and it just kind of goes on and on. Oftentimes, all they're looking for is just what I refer to as that permission-granted discussion to take place, and a little bit of compassionate help from our end to get to the decision to euthanize. So I think it can play a role, certainly before these horses hit our organizations, and start to use resources that might be best used for horses that can transition, and have a pathway to a new home. I also think that we think, once they get into your facility, really making good decisions and having euthanasia protocols in place so that we're not pouring. I've seen organizations, and this work is hard, and I don't want to discount that, so I'm not criticizing any organizations that do this at all, but I've just seen where we dump tens of thousands of dollars to try to help one single horse when we know in our heart and our head that outcome and that horse is best helped via compassionate euthanasia, and the many other horses, pawn at the barn door to get into rehome. We could turn some of those resources to them to try to help them. So I would just say from our end, encouraging you to establish euthanasia protocols, and again, recognize that it is sensitive and it is hard, but I think to do the best work that we can for the greatest number of horses, we have to address it.
And I agree. Talking to the owners, where I'll start in these conversations, and for our horses, say at Old Friends or for anybody that I talk to in practice, is I say the owner of that horse knows that horse better than anybody else does. So if they think that horse's quality of life is declining, then we have to start thinking about this. And then I always rely on the American Association of Equine Practitioners has everybody can get that online, has really nice guidelines for what we have to go through to think about these decisions, because is it a chronic incurable condition? Does the horse need to be on medication the rest of his life? Is it a danger to humans? All those things figure in and more. So I think that's a really good guideline. I know the TAA and the TCA use that as their guideline. And so whenever I'm thinking of if it's time to put a horse down, or if a horse have a problem where it needs to be put down, then I'm going to look at those guidelines and make that the basis. And then really once we get past that, what I tell people, and this is what I use, is that, I think a horse wants to do two things. It wants to be able to walk around, eat grass, and be happy. And if they can't do those two things, if it's got some condition that interferes with those, then that horse, to me, that boils it all down. If they can't walk around, eat grass, pain-free or anxiety-free, then that horse probably, it is time to put that horse down. But and then the other about conditions for these horses is you do have to think sometimes we're able to do a lot medically, but maybe what that horse is going to go through, or does it have a 25% chance coming through this surgery? And older horses, the pedunculate lipomas, y'all have probably been through these fatty tumors that can wrap around the gut, strangulate the gut. If we catch those early, sometimes they do fine, like just a regular colic surgery. But if we take those horses and have to remove small intestine, put small intestine back together, that's a huge bill to put on an organization, especially when they have a lot of horses. And those horses may not do well post-op and have a long hospitalization. So I think trying to think if there is something I can do for this horse, what am I going to put this horse through, and what are its chances? And money is always real. How much money am I going to put into this, and how likely is this horse to be able to again go back to eat grass and be happy and pain-free again as well.
Thank you. The next couple of questions I have are for all of you, specifically because your touch points in aftercare are so different from one another. So the first one, I was wondering if you could think about one or maybe two things that if you could change in aftercare would make your role easier, more efficient, or in some way better. So what is a change that you would make that would somehow make it easier for you to do what you do? You want to just go down the row?
I have to be first. I think for me, as other folks have said today, if we could look at these different steps that these horses, thoroughbreds, go through in their lives, when they're bred, when they're sold, when they go to the track, when they win a big race, if we could find ways at those stages that money could go to aftercare, I think that would make a big difference. Because if we could just think all the way through this horse's life, always thinking about aftercare, that's what I would like to do and raise some money for all of our organizations that need it.
Thank you.
I kind of have two. One, I would just say, and it's a little bit more philosophical, is let's not let perfect be the enemy of good in what we're trying to do, because when we do good work, we do damn good work in rehoming these horses, and it's nice to see that. So I would just say, in our pursuit of perfection, let's not let it get in the way of doing really good work. And secondly, I love to talk about what's right in this world that we work in and we love so much, and that is the organizations that have stepped up to the plate. And when we were having our rehearsal a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned the Jockey Club and just the outstanding job that the Jockey Club has done to set an example of when a breed organization steps forward to help their horses transition and move into this next part of their life, they can do monumental work. I would love to see all organizations, including my former employer, just dabble in a little bit. We're not the enemy up here. We're friends and we're sensible, and we, like I said, we do really good work, and I would just love to see other breed organizations become a part of helping their own animals find their next lovely home, lovely spot in life, lovely next career. And if we could get them all to come together, it would just make our lives a lot easier and better.
I would love full transparency. It'd be so wonderful to get a horse donated that we have its history. I mean, that's one of the biggest roadblocks we hit is we get going with the horse, and then all of a sudden we're like, it's not holding up, and then, oh, there's screws here and there's screws there. And it's like the trainers are afraid to tell us because they think we won't take the horse, when all it is if we can know that, we know, well, we shouldn't have started jumping it over jumps. It should have a different kind of career. We take the horses to try and figure out its best career path for the longevity so it lasts into its 20s. So even sometimes for me, it's getting a current Coggins is difficult. It would just be nice to be able to have the records, the transparency, and I think educating the owners. A lot of times the trainer will say, well, this one's just done running. They want it off the bills right now. And it's like, well, can they at least pay a few months board or whatever with the horse to come here? So I guess those would be the two things I would really appreciate.
そうですね。まずその引退競走馬が新しく馬術の馬としてキャリアをこれから、学んでいくために、健康的に準備が整っているかと、やはりあと気象的にも、耳を傾ける意思があるのか、それは大事なことです。ライダーとして一番最初に求めることは、一番最初の歩くということ、そこから始めていきます。シンプルなようでとても馬が波足で歩くということはとても大事なことです。
One of the biggest challenges is getting the race horses healthy and comfortable again. Well, they even start with walking. Well, that is very simple principle, but very important in the base of how they try to get back to healthy. So it takes time and money.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask you too, and I'm guessing Tom and Ashley might deal with this more than Brian and Kenki, but you guys might have valuable insight on this as well. What do you wish owners and trainers in Racing Connections understood better about aftercare? Whether it's the process itself in retiring their own horses or the greater aftercare industry.
I don't know if they take into account how many years this horse has in aftercare or its career after it races. I don't know that they're thinking 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. So like I said before, giving us as much information as possible and money to help get these horses where they're going to be for the next 15, 20 years of their life.
And I would probably just add to that, like, rather than looking at that next last race, consider them retiring before that next last race. Because it's often that last race where we see an injury come. And I know a lot of our organizations that deal strictly in the thoroughbred world have developed some amazing relationships. It's primarily with the trainers at the racetracks, I think, that I've seen. And they've really, they've honed that relationship with the trainer to encourage the trainer. You know, I'm not afraid of you sending us horses. I'm afraid of you sending us horses that are catastrophically injured, that they require a lot of money for us to rehabilitate to get to a good spot. And they've now got these trainers thinking about, okay, rather than that last claiming race, send them our way before that last claiming race. So I would just encourage those types of, you know, open dialogue, open communication, positive relationships between you as a rehoming organization and those folks at the track, owners, trainers, even track management it can play a role in it.
I think that goes back to also educating these owners, and a lot of them are doing it as a hobby, so they're not educated in anything beyond what they see at the track happening. So the trainer being able to say this to the owner, like, if we do another race, we're really risking the horse not being able to continue on doing anything else besides being a pasture ornament or something. So I think there's that component as well with the owners.
And I'm assuming in your aftercare organization, you deal much more with the trainers than the owners.
Rarely deal with the owners. I just know what's being told to me through that.
Kenki, do you have anything to add?
Yes. 日本では、まあ、僕のその選手としての意見なんですが、日本ですでに引退競走馬のセカンドキャリアを積むための引退競走馬のための競技会が2018年からもうすでに開催されています。そこで活躍した馬はスポーツホースとして評価されて、その賞金というか飼育賞金でいいですかねをいただくことができます。それは、まあ、ある意味スポーツの楽しみであり、彼に引退競走馬にとっても一つ活躍する場を設けさせてもらっていることなので、とてもありがたいことですが、それは JRA の支援によって開催されています。
So in Japan, well, this is just my personal opinion as a dressage writer. So actually, retired racehorse, they have second career in the retired horse championship, and in that race, if they win, then they can get the money and reward from them. And, those fundings are supported by the JRA. So those may definitely help out their second career.
Thank you. And then I'd like to end on a positive note, even though this is challenges in aftercare. I'd like to ask each of you, what is a challenge you feel that aftercare has overcome? It can be recently, it can be in probably the last 2 decades or so, since aftercare has really taken a front seat in many conversations. But can you talk about any challenges that you feel like we have either made significant progress or overcome?
Well, I think people are thinking about aftercare now, and I think we've finally brought it to the front. I think that people think now what these horses will do afterwards, and before they probably didn't as much. And I think we're opening, at least for veterinarians, I can say, one of the things I've been trying to do is help veterinarians realize more about it and volunteer to help everybody out, because to me it's really rewarding. It was nice, that was riding in that Kubota out there with Antonio, the farm manager. That's my, I always say some people fish, some people golf. I work on old race horses. It just helps me. So I think people need to realize that, and I think people are.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the spotlight that we've been able to shine on transitioning horses over the last, however many years it is. I don't know anymore. Time goes by so quickly. But we've really been shining this big light on adoptable horses and making people understand, helping folks understand that these aren't horses that need quote unquote rescuing, and it isn't about creating new homes. It's simply about finding those new homes. And I think, positively, we're doing a much better job at that. Secondly, I would say, back to my comment about industry organizations. I used to say leaning in, I now say saddling up. The industry organizations who saddle up and partner with the rehoming organizations. Good job for doing that. And let's keep finding those sensible industry organizations that can be a part of it. Let's welcome them in. Let's not keep them at arm's length. Let's focus on the things that we all agree on, because I promise you, like in so many things in life, that which we agree on is a lot bigger than that which we disagree on. And if we can focus on those things, we're going to continue to really do some positive things for these horses.
I think showcasing the versatility of the horses and their careers after, like RRP has done tremendous things for putting the horses in one place where you can just see that one's doing the trail ranch horse, this one's fox hunting. Where else can you go that you can see one breed doing all these different disciplines? So I think that's been really huge for promoting the aftercare for the horses to continue on into those other careers.
そうですね、僕が引退競走馬を再調教するにあたって本当に小さなことでも喜びを感じるということが大事です。それはさっきおっしゃるように、例えば赤ちゃんが言葉をしゃべるたりとか、小さい子供が立ち上がった時に感動するようなことと本当に一緒のことなので、その上でチャンスや運があればサラブレッドはトップクラスでも活躍する馬になると思います。
So the retired, race horses, well, it's really important for them to make a little happiness, like, human baby, the same thing, give a chance, and then that makes happier them, and then they're gonna go on and transit to the next stage.
Thank you. And we've got a little less than 10 minutes. If you guys have questions, we touched very superficially on a lot of challenges, but these guys can definitely take questions if you want to go deeper on any of them or touch on any new ones. Since they have the 4 mics, if you use your outdoor voices, I'm sure we can capture, or I can restate it.
My name is Jessica Schwartz. We're here with EchoScope Performance. We're a little bit on the other side of things because we're looking to help you guys solve some of these problems. And so my question is, what are some of the top medical challenges you're seeing when you receive these horses? And where should we be focusing some of our research efforts?
And I'm just going to restate your questions so we have it on the video feed for people who watch it in the future. What are some of the top medical challenges that you guys deal with when you receive these horses?
I'd say in race horses it'd be ankles, if they have fetlocks, and just making sure that what disease may be there, just know what's there before you start to make sure what's appropriate for them. So I always look at ankles. If you get gray horses, I always look under their tails, look for melanomas. So that's another one I do. Those would be my 2 that I probably worry about the most.
I would say from our point of view, it's just really more general, and that is do medical intake exams as thorough as you possibly can on the horses that are coming into your facility. Have your veterinarian take a step back and do that, poll to hoof, muzzle to tail, overview of the horse. Are we dropping fetlocks and we've got a DSLD issue going on? Are we looking in the mouth and are they missing some teeth to where they're going to have a challenge for the rest of their life? Do radiographs on front feet if they've been, ridden and raced and things like that. And it costs us about anywhere between $500 to $700, depending on how in-depth we go with our intake exam. But it very much mirrors a pre-purchase exam that our veterinarian does on all of the horses that come into our facility. One thing we've learned from a medical point of view is the more we know up front, the better and more efficiently we can help that horse transition. So we see the same things that he was just talking about, but I would just say ours is just more general about conducting that good, thorough medical exam upon intake.
I would say everything they said. Something else that's been really helpful for us is GastroGuard, and they've been providing us with the short-dated...
Drop the price.
But the short-dated GastroGuard, and they've been providing it for us. So that's really helped with these horses coming in the new environment internally. And then if they don't need some sort of injection, they need to get lubricated usually in some fashion. But or Adequan, or, just a daily joint supplement, or those are just some additional components. They're not necessity, but those are some things we end up having to look at for some of these horses to just give them a little boost to get going again.
そうですね。身体的な、怪我は、前の方がおっしゃる通りで、そういうことに投資だったり時間はかかるんですけど、ライダーとしてだったりトレーナーという立場からすると、その後に、きちんと健康的な運動、正しい運動をすれば正しいより良い筋肉がついてくるので、それは彼らにとって、その後の人生を健康に、生活する上で大事なことで、僕の役割としては乗ることによってそういう健康な筋肉をつけていってあげるっていうことは僕の一つの課題ですね。
So actually, the physical strength is the key, especially the retired horse who's got an injury, like the other panelists told in advance. It is necessary to have some money, but as a rider slash trainer, the correct right practice and the training is the key to build up the correct and right muscles. If they have healthy muscle, they can live longer, and especially in the transition time, it is time to build up the good muscle for leading their longevity.
Thank you. That was a great question. Does anybody else have? Yes.
I wanted to know if you guys could see a future where using the microchips to transfer x-rays and tests, maybe not personal information, I know that's a big issue, but maybe if we got the AAEP and the Jockey Club, when the horses are microchipped, since all the race horses are now microchipped, we could somehow attach x-rays and tests. I know nobody wants their personal information, but I too, a lot of the thoroughbreds we get in, a lot of the horses we get in, it's like pulling teeth trying to get anything that's happened, and you'll have people tell you a lot of stuff. And it would save all of us a ton of money, especially if we had x-rays to look at and compare to. It would be wonderful somewhere in the future if something like that could happen.
And just for the video feed, I'm going to reiterate it less eloquently, I'm sure. But if there is a way that we could be able to transfer that horse's medical history either through microchips or through a different path without transferring all of the personal information from the owners and the trainers with it, but the hard data that would help save time, save money, make the retraining process more efficient.
I think that'd be amazing. And it'd be nice with the dates too, so then you know if you're getting a horse, oh, it just had whatever x-rayed 2 months ago versus having to spend the money on x-raying if, it's been close enough. I think that would be amazing.
It's beyond my pay grade and my Oklahoma education level to even figure that stuff out. But I just wonder if getting the microchip makers together to talk about something like that might be worthwhile, like Microchip ID or whatever they are now.
QR code.
That's what I'm sure it's doable. I have a habit of making everything seem more simple than it is, but my gut tells me it's doable. It's the how behind doing it.
Compliance of getting the vets to say, yes, and even without their diagnosis, maybe, again, I understand the privacy issue, but if we could just get the tests, so the veterinarians really aren't liable. Here's an x-ray, here's a test. You use your vet, who you're paying, to then translate that. That we just have that would save us our MRIs or CAT scans. That would save us so much money. And if we could get maybe the AAEP and the Jockey Club to say, hey, this isn't going to hurt anybody. I don't know, to think for the future.
Well, and there's another panel coming up that this relates to really well as well. And it could also be a function where they may not want to transfer, they being the horse's previous connections, or regulatory officials might not want to transfer that while that horse is an active racehorse, but the Jockey Club has its sold as retired from racing form, and if maybe that form is completed, that kind of triggers the transfer of whatever necessary information could be helpful in that horse's post-track career.
Yeah, if we could have something like in Europe, a little bit more of a passport, at least that would help you for vaccinations, EIA testing, all that. And as a veterinarian, you're asking a question, I was thinking, there's a lot of things, like you said, there's a lot of, it's hard. It's really hard, especially it's difficult for us in a pre-purchase if we know the horse to even work for the buyer and the seller and things like that. But I was thinking, what is there something that's out there that we could, and a lot of racing jurisdictions now have that, I think it's called Compass, where
Encompass,
they
yep.
Encompass, where they have the at least the racing exams of those horses go on that. And since that's more of I don't know, I'm speaking off something I don't necessarily know, but since it's more of a governmental thing, maybe that's more free access, is it potentially at least the Encompass records is something that could be out there. Because, every time, well, in most states, every time that horse goes to the track, it's getting a lameness exam, or soundness exam, I should say, and getting palpated, and at least those records would exist. So I think if we could start there, that's really objective, a lot of eyes looking at that horse, and potentially easier to get a hold of for public use, I would say.
All right, and with that, we are right on time for finishing this panel and having our next speaker. These guys are going to be around later, so if you want to ask them any questions, or like I said, their contact information is in the book, and they are very open to you reaching out with questions, so please do that. And while Amanda is going to hand out some goodies to them, I do want to remind everybody to, if you're not a member of IFAR, please sign up to be a member of IFAR. There's information in your program and bag to do that. And IFAR is social, so if you are not following IFAR on social media, and if you are on social media, please give them a follow. They're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, so please give them a follow there. So thank you to this panel so much, and we're going to do our next speaker in here, and then we'll head to lunch in the next room.